The moment a badge forgets to see a person, justice begins counting the seconds until the truth arrives. Rain drifted gently across the parking lot, turning the afternoon sky into a blanket of silver clouds that reflected across the polished hood of an aging dark blue Bic. Red and blue emergency lights flashed against the wet pavement, creating a rhythm that seemed louder than the gathering crowd's whispers. At the center of it all stood 69-year-old Evelyn Carter, her shoulders straight, her chin lifted, and her hands secured in front of her while she remained remarkably calm. She did not argue. She did not shout. She simply watched the officer standing a few feet away, waiting for someone to finally notice what had been sitting in plain sight all along. Officer Ryan Mitchell adjusted the microphone on his uniform and spoke with complete confidence as another patrol vehicle rolled into the lot. Possible stolen vehicle. Driver claims ownership, but circumstances remain suspicious. His voice carried certainty, the kind that often sounds convincing before anyone has asked enough questions. Around them, shoppers paused outside the auto parts store. A mechanic wiped grease from his hands and stared from the open garage bay. A mother loading groceries quietly guided her children toward the sidewalk. Everyone sensed that something important was unfolding, yet no one knew how dramatically the next few moments would change every life standing there. Then another vehicle entered the parking lot. It was not moving quickly, and there were no flashing lights demanding attention. A dark county-issued SUV came to a slow stop several yards away. The driver's door opened, and County Police Chief Marcus Carter stepped onto the rain-soaked pavement. His expression carried the calm focus of a man who had spent decades making difficult decisions under pressure. He had been responding to an unusual request from dispatch after learning that a routine traffic investigation had suddenly required command-level review. He expected paperwork. He expected questions. He did not expect to recognize the woman standing beside the Bic. Marcus looked toward the gathering of officers, then toward the elderly woman waiting quietly near the front fender. Time seemed to hesitate. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly before every other sound disappeared beneath a single word spoken barely above a whisper. Mom. Conversation stopped instantly. The mechanic froze where he stood. Officer Emily Foster slowly lowered the notepad she had been holding. Ryan Mitchell stared at the county police chief, convinced he had misunderstood what he had just heard. Marcus took one careful step forward, his face revealing neither anger nor panic. Instead, it reflected something far more unsettling, a deep disappointment that no amount of rank could erase. Evelyn finally looked directly at her son. Her voice remained gentle, steady, and unmistakably firm. Marcus, don't protect me because I'm your mother. A breeze carried the rain across the empty spaces of the parking lot as every officer listened without moving. Evelyn continued, never raising her voice. Protect the truth because that's your job. Marcus nodded once, slowly. He did not reach for authority. He did not issue accusations. Instead, he turned toward Ryan with the same professionalism he would have shown in any investigation. Officer, he said calmly, before anyone says another word, I want every fact exactly as you observed it. Ryan swallowed, suddenly aware that every decision made over the past 47 minutes was about to be examined one detail at a time. None of them realized that the story had begun long before the handcuffs, long before the parking lot, and long before anyone knew the woman beside the Bic was the county police chief's mother. The truth had started with a promise made years earlier, a family that believed character mattered more than titles, and an ordinary drive across town that should have lasted less than 20 minutes. Instead, it became the day an entire department would be forced to remember that justice is supposed to recognize a citizen long before it recognizes someone's last name. 47 minutes earlier, the rain had not yet arrived, and the afternoon carried the comfortable warmth of early fall as Evelyn Carter carefully folded a light sweater across the passenger seat before settling behind the wheel of her beloved dark blue Bic. She smiled as she rested one hand gently on the worn leather steering wheel, a familiar habit she had developed over nearly 3 decades of driving the same car. To anyone passing by, it looked like a beautifully maintained classic automobile. To Evelyn, it was something far more valuable. It was the last promise she had made to her husband, Isaiah Carter. Years before illness had taken him, Isaiah had spent countless weekends restoring the Bic in their garage, polishing every chrome detail until it reflected the afternoon sun like a mirror. On the day he handed Evelyn the keys after finishing the restoration, he had laughed and told her that the car deserved someone patient enough to appreciate every mile instead of someone eager to impress strangers. Before he passed away, he asked her never to think of the Bic as an object. He wanted her to see it as a reminder that memories could keep moving forward even after the people who created them were gone. Evelyn had honored that promise every single day. Earlier that morning she had placed the updated registration paperwork, proof of insurance, and maintenance records inside a neat envelope resting in the glove compartment. Only 2 weeks earlier, she had completed the paperwork transferring the vehicle entirely into her own name after years of leaving it jointly registered with Isaiah. She liked keeping every document organized because Isaiah used to joke that preparation solved problems before they had a chance to become emergencies. Before leaving home, Evelyn glanced at a framed family photograph sitting beside the front door. It showed a much younger Marcus wearing the proud smile of a new police academy graduate while Isaiah stood beside him with one hand on his shoulder. Evelyn gently touched the edge of the frame before picking up her purse. Her phone chimed with a cheerful message from her 16-year-old granddaughter, Maya. "Practice is almost over, Grandma. See you soon." Evelyn smiled again and answered, "I will be there right on time, sweetheart." Being punctual had always mattered to her. She believed arriving when you promise someone was one of the simplest ways to show love. As she backed the Bic out of the driveway, neighbors waved from freshly trimmed lawns, and she returned every greeting with the same warm smile that had made her one of the most familiar faces in the community. She drove well within the speed limit, enjoying the peaceful neighborhoods that slowly gave way to the busier commercial district where she planned to stop briefly for windshield wiper blades before picking up Maya. The engine hummed smoothly, the dashboard remained spotless, and soft jazz played quietly through the speakers. Nothing about the drive suggested that it would become anything other than another ordinary afternoon. Yet while Evelyn focused on keeping a promise to her granddaughter, someone else was about to notice the Bic for reasons that had nothing to do with its history, its careful maintenance, or the woman who had faithfully protected both for so many years. Sometimes the smallest assumptions begin with nothing more than a passing glance, and before the truth has an opportunity to introduce itself, certainty has already started writing its own story. Officer Ryan Mitchell had started his shift before sunrise with every intention of proving that he deserved the confidence his supervisors had placed in him. The weekly patrol briefing had focused on a recent increase in vehicle theft reports across several neighboring counties. Most of the stolen vehicles had already been recovered, but command reminded every officer that paying close attention to unusual circumstances could prevent the next crime before it happened. Ryan listened carefully, determined to finish the week with results that reflected initiative rather than routine. He believed experience often began with trusting instinct, and over time he had started confusing confidence with certainty. As the afternoon moved quietly through the commercial district, Ryan guided his patrol cruiser along Main Street, watching traffic flow at a steady pace. Families visited small businesses, delivery trucks unloaded merchandise, and commuters prepared for the evening drive home. Nothing appeared urgent until a dark blue Bic entered his field of view from the opposite direction. The classic car immediately caught his attention because it looked exceptionally well maintained, standing out among newer vehicles. Ryan turned his cruiser around and merged into traffic several car lengths behind it. At first, he simply intended to observe. The Bic maintained the posted speed limit, signaled every lane change, stopped smoothly at each traffic light, and never drifted outside its lane. There was no moving violation to justify concern. Yet Ryan continued watching, telling himself that something about the situation did not seem right. He noticed the elderly black woman driving alone with both hands resting carefully on the steering wheel. Instead of asking himself whether she had done anything wrong, he found himself searching for a reason to explain why the scene felt unusual to him. That quiet assumption slowly became stronger than the facts unfolding directly in front of him. When the Bic passed through another intersection, Ryan entered the license plate into the patrol computer. His attention shifted quickly between traffic and the keyboard. One character was entered incorrectly, a small mistake that seemed insignificant at the time. Seconds later, the database returned information connected to a different vehicle with a similar registration sequence that had once appeared in an old stolen vehicle report before later being recovered and cleared. Ryan focused on the initial alert without waiting for additional verification to finish loading across the screen. Instead of questioning the incomplete information, he began building a conclusion around it. In his mind, the alert confirmed the uneasy feeling he already carried. He radioed dispatch and requested a secondary confirmation while continuing to follow the BIC from a safe distance. Dispatch acknowledged the request and began processing the inquiry, but radio traffic from several unrelated calls briefly delayed the response. During those few minutes, Ryan convinced himself that acting quickly would demonstrate good judgment. Ahead, Evelyn signaled into the parking lot of a neighborhood auto parts store, exactly where she planned to buy new windshield wiper blades before picking up Maya. She parked neatly near the entrance, gathered her purse, and reached for her shopping list without noticing the patrol cruiser quietly turning into the lot behind her. Ryan stepped out of his vehicle, straightened his uniform, and walked toward the BIC believing he was about to solve an important case. He had no idea that the only thing waiting for him inside that parking lot was an ordinary grandmother keeping a promise, while the assumption forming inside his own mind was about to become far more dangerous than the computer error that had started it all. Evelyn stepped out of the BIC with the same quiet confidence she carried everywhere she went, smoothing the sleeve of her light sweater before locking the driver's door with a gentle click. She glanced toward the entrance of the auto parts store, mentally reviewing the short list she had written that morning. Windshield wiper blades came first, then she would drive straight across town to pick up Maya before school activities ended. Her phone rested inside her purse, and the family photograph tucked into the glove compartment remained exactly where she had left it. Everything about the afternoon felt ordinary until she heard a calm but unmistakably official voice behind her. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Evelyn turned slowly and offered a polite smile as Officer Ryan Mitchell approached. "Of course, officer. Is something wrong?" Ryan introduced himself professionally before asking if the BIC belonged to her. Evelyn answered without hesitation. "Yes, it does." Ryan nodded but continued watching her carefully. "May I see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance?" Evelyn immediately agreed. "Certainly. They are all inside the vehicle." She carefully explained each movement before unlocking the driver's door and opening the glove compartment. Inside rested a neatly organized envelope exactly where she had placed it earlier that day. She handed Ryan every document without complaint. Ryan examined the paperwork in silence. The driver's license matched the woman standing before him. The registration listed Evelyn Carter as the legal owner. The insurance policy carried the same name and current address. Nothing in the documents appeared altered or suspicious. Yet Ryan looked back toward his patrol computer where the incomplete database results still occupied his attention. Instead of allowing the documents to challenge his assumption, he began searching for reasons to doubt them. "How long have you owned this vehicle?" he asked. Evelyn smiled softly. "My husband restored it many years ago. After he passed away, I completed the paperwork transferring everything into my name." Ryan paused when he noticed the recent registration date. Rather than seeing a normal ownership update following a spouse's passing, he quietly interpreted the newer paperwork as another reason to remain suspicious. Before he could ask another question, George Alvarez stepped outside the nearby garage carrying a small box of replacement parts. He immediately recognized Evelyn. "Mrs. Carter," he called with a friendly wave, "I have not seen the BIC in a couple of months." "Still running beautifully." Evelyn smiled. "It certainly is." George looked toward Ryan and added naturally, "She has been bringing that car here for years. Isaiah used to work on it every spring before he got sick." Ryan thanked George for the information but did not allow it to influence his thinking. A second patrol unit entered the parking lot, and Officer Emily Foster walked over after hearing the radio traffic. Ryan briefly explained the situation while Emily quietly compared the vehicle identification number visible through the windshield with the registration papers Evelyn had provided. After several careful seconds, Emily looked up. "Everything I can see matches the documents." Ryan frowned slightly. Dispatch has not completed the confirmation yet. Emily answered carefully. Then perhaps we should wait for the full return before making any conclusions. Evelyn remained patient, standing quietly beside her car without interrupting either officer. She believed facts had a way of resolving misunderstandings if people allowed them enough time. Unfortunately, Ryan had already begun trusting his first impression. More than the growing collection of evidence surrounding him, and with every passing second, the truth became easier for him to overlook than the story he had already convinced himself was real. The parking lot grew quieter as customers entering the store sensed the conversation had become unusually serious. A light breeze carried dry leaves across the pavement while the delayed response from dispatch still had not reached Ryan's radio. Officer Emily Foster remained beside the BIC, carefully reviewing the registration one more time before looking toward Ryan. "Everything we have in front of us points to Mrs. Carter as the lawful owner," she said in an even tone. "The vehicle identification number matches the paperwork. We can wait another minute for dispatch to finish the verification." Ryan looked from the documents to the patrol computer inside his cruiser. The partial alert continued to dominate his thinking, and every passing second strengthened the conclusion he had already reached. "Sometimes paperwork looks perfect because it was prepared that way," he replied. Evelyn listened without interrupting. She folded her hands gently in front of her and answered with the same calm voice she had used since the conversation began. "Officer, if there is any misunderstanding, I am happy to wait while everything is checked. I have nowhere to run. I only need to pick up my granddaughter before her after-school program ends." George Alvarez stepped closer, remaining a respectful distance away. "Officer, I have known Mrs. Carter and her husband for years. That BIC has been coming to my garage longer than some of my employees have worked here." Ryan acknowledged George with a brief nod but remained unconvinced. In his mind, witnesses could simply be mistaken. Emily quietly lowered her voice. "Ryan, dispatch has not confirmed the initial information yet. We should let the process finish." Ryan glanced once more at Evelyn before making a decision he believed was justified. He said, "Until ownership is fully confirmed, I need you to remain with us while we continue the investigation." Evelyn gave a slow nod. "I understand your responsibility, officer. I only ask that every document be considered before any conclusions are made." At that exact moment, her phone began ringing inside her purse. The familiar ringtone echoed softly through the quiet parking lot. Evelyn looked toward Ryan. "That is probably my granddaughter. She is expecting me. May I answer for just a moment and let her know I will be late?" Ryan hesitated only briefly before replying, "Please leave the phone where it is for now." The ringing stopped. A few seconds later it began again. This time the illuminated screen became visible through the partially open purse. Emily happened to glance down and noticed the caller identification. Marcus Carter. She assumed it was another family member trying to reach Evelyn and thought nothing more of the name. Evelyn sighed gently. "He will become worried if I do not answer." Ryan remained focused on his original assumption. "We can take care of phone calls after we finish here." The call ended once more. Silence returned to the parking lot until Ryan spoke again. "Mrs. Carter, based on the information currently available, I need you to step over here while we continue verifying the vehicle." Evelyn complied immediately without resistance or complaint. Before following his instruction, she looked toward her BIC for only a moment, remembering the promise she had made to Isaiah to care for the car with patience and dignity. She had spent a lifetime believing that honesty eventually found its voice. She still believed that now. What she could not know was that every unanswered call on the phone inside her purse was quietly setting another chain of events into motion, and somewhere across town, the person trying hardest to reach her had already begun wondering why his mother had never broken a promise before today. Across town, 16-year-old Maya Carter stood outside the community youth center with a backpack resting at her feet, checking the parking lot every few seconds as students slowly disappeared into waiting family cars. Her grandmother had never been late before. Not once. Evelyn believed that every promise deserved the same respect whether it involved a business meeting or picking up someone you loved. After school. Maya smiled at first, assuming traffic had delayed her by a few minutes. She reached for her phone and called. The call rang several times before ending without an answer. She tried again. The same result. Meanwhile, inside County Police Headquarters, Chief Marcus Carter had just concluded a meeting reviewing next month's community outreach schedule when his own phone vibrated across the conference table. Maya's name appeared on the screen. Marcus answered immediately. "Hi, sweetheart. Is everything all right?" Maya hesitated before speaking. "Grandma has not arrived yet. She always comes early. I have called her several times, but she is not answering." Marcus looked at the clock mounted on the wall. His mother valued punctuality almost as much as honesty. If she had not answered her phone, something unusual had happened. He remained calm, not wanting Maya to become anxious. "Stay inside the building with the staff. I will find out where she is." After ending the call, Marcus dialed Evelyn's number himself. The phone continued ringing with no response. He tried again. Still nothing. Years of law enforcement had taught him that unexplained silence often deserved attention, but years of being Evelyn's son reminded him that she would never ignore her family without a reason. Rather than making assumptions, Marcus contacted County Dispatch through official channels. "This is Chief Carter. I am attempting to locate a family member who is overdue. Can someone check whether her vehicle has recently been involved in any police contact?" The dispatcher acknowledged the request and began searching current activity logs. Only moments later, a response came back. "Chief, there is an active vehicle investigation involving a dark blue Bic registered to Evelyn Carter at the Riverside Auto Parts parking lot." Marcus remained completely composed. His voice did not change. "Understood. Please preserve all body camera recordings associated with that incident and ensure no digital files are overwritten. Also verify the registration directly through the state database rather than relying on preliminary alerts." The dispatcher immediately forwarded the requests. Within less than a minute, the updated database returned a complete report. The registration was current. The title belonged to Evelyn Carter. The vehicle identification number matched every official record. There was no active stolen vehicle report connected to the Bic. An additional review revealed that an earlier inquiry had been generated from an incorrect license plate entry that closely resembled another vehicle from an outdated case. Marcus closed his eyes for only a brief moment before opening them again. He was no longer thinking as a concerned son alone. He was thinking as the leader responsible for protecting public trust. "Send Captain Laura Jenkins to the location," he instructed calmly. "Advise every unit to maintain the current scene exactly as it is until supervisory review is complete. No one is to alter reports or recordings." He picked up his vehicle keys without rushing, thanked the dispatcher, and walked steadily toward the parking garage. Outside, dark clouds had begun covering the afternoon sky as the first drops of rain touched the windshield of his county-issued sport utility vehicle. Marcus started the engine and drove toward Riverside Auto Parts, unaware that within minutes he would step into a parking lot where duty, family, and truth were all waiting in the exact same place. By the time Marcus Carter turned into the Riverside Auto Parts parking lot, a gentle rain had begun covering the pavement with a thin layer of shimmering reflections. Flashing emergency lights painted red and blue across the wet asphalt, but Marcus paid almost no attention to the patrol vehicles. His eyes searched only for one familiar face. Then he saw her. Evelyn Carter stood quietly beside her dark blue Bic exactly where she had been waiting, her posture still dignified despite everything that had happened. For the briefest moment, the experienced county police chief was no longer looking at a police scene. He was looking at the woman who had taught him to tell the truth before he had ever learned how to wear a badge. The single word escaped almost without thought. "Mom." Every conversation stopped immediately. The mechanic standing near the garage entrance lowered the box he had been carrying. Officer Emily Foster slowly turned toward Marcus, suddenly realizing why the name on the unanswered phone had sounded familiar. Officer Ryan Mitchell remained motionless, struggling to understand what he had just heard. Marcus walked forward at an unhurried pace, stopping several feet from Evelyn. His expression revealed concern, but his voice remained calm and measured. "Are you all right?" Evelyn offered the same reassuring smile she had given him throughout his life whenever she wanted him to think clearly before reacting emotionally. "I am fine, Marcus." She paused for only a second before adding the words that would reshape everything happening in that parking lot. "Do not protect me because I am your mother. Protect the truth because that is your job." Marcus lowered his eyes briefly, acknowledging the lesson she had repeated since he was a young boy. When he looked back toward the officers, every trace of personal emotion had been replaced by quiet professionalism. "Officer Mitchell," he said respectfully, "please explain every fact that led to your decision, beginning with your initial observation." Ryan cleared his throat and described noticing the BIC, running the license plate, receiving what he believed was a stolen vehicle alert, and continuing the investigation. Marcus listened without interrupting. When Ryan finished, Marcus asked a simple question. "Did you review the complete state verification before reaching your conclusion?" Ryan hesitated. Dispatch had not completed the response yet. Marcus nodded once. "Did the registration provided by Mrs. Carter match her driver's license?" Ryan answered softly. "Yes." "Did the visible vehicle identification number match the registration?" Ryan looked briefly toward Emily before replying. "Yes." Marcus continued. "Did a witness identify Mrs. Carter as the longtime owner of the vehicle?" George Alvarez quietly raised one hand. Ryan answered again. "Yes." The silence that followed felt heavier than any raised voice could have been. Emily finally spoke. "Chief, I advised waiting for the full verification before moving further." Marcus acknowledged her statement with a respectful nod before his radio sounded. Dispatch transmitted the completed database report over the secure channel. The registration was confirmed. Ownership was confirmed. The previous alert had resulted from an incorrect character entered during the initial inquiry. Marcus looked neither angry nor triumphant. Instead, he seemed saddened by how many opportunities had existed to prevent the misunderstanding. He turned toward Evelyn. "Mom, I am sorry this happened." Evelyn gently shook her head. "Do not apologize for facts you have not finished examining." Then she looked directly at Ryan. Her voice remained calm, carrying neither bitterness nor satisfaction. "Officer, every person you meet deserves the same careful attention you would give if someone you loved were standing where I am today." Ryan lowered his eyes, realizing that the truth had not arrived because the county police chief had entered the parking lot. The truth had been standing beside the BIC from the very beginning, waiting patiently for someone to finally believe what the evidence had been saying all along. The rain continued falling softly as Captain Laura Jenkins arrived only minutes after Marcus had secured the scene, and from that moment forward, the incident stopped being a misunderstanding between one officer and one citizen. It became an official examination of whether every decision had been made according to the standards the department expected from every member wearing its uniform. Marcus remained several steps away from his mother, intentionally allowing Captain Jenkins to assume responsibility for the supervisory review. "Captain," Marcus said evenly, "because Mrs. Carter is my mother, I am formally removing myself from any investigative authority. I want this handled exactly as it would be if none of us knew each other." Captain Jenkins nodded without hesitation. "Understood, Chief." She immediately requested copies of every body camera recording, radio transmission, dispatch log, computer inquiry, and written field note connected to the stop. Officer Emily Foster provided her observations exactly as they had occurred, carefully explaining that she had verified the visible vehicle identification number against the registration documents and had recommended waiting for the completed database confirmation before drawing conclusions. George Alvarez repeated that he had personally known Evelyn Carter and the BIC for many years, while dispatch documented the timeline showing when the corrected state registration had become available. Every statement fit together like pieces of the same puzzle, and each new detail pointed toward the same conclusion. The evidence had consistently supported Evelyn's ownership from the beginning. Ryan Mitchell stood quietly as Captain Jenkins reviewed the sequence one step at a time. There was no raised voice, no public humiliation, and no attempt to assign blame before the facts were complete. Instead, every question focused on procedure. Why was the initial computer alert accepted before full verification? Why were valid registration documents not given greater weight? Why was a witness statement dismissed without additional examination? Why was the recommendation to wait for dispatch not followed? Ryan answered honestly. He admitted that he had trusted his first impression more than the growing body of evidence around him. Saying the words aloud seemed to make him realize how many opportunities he had been given to slow down and reconsider. Marcus listened silently, saying nothing until Captain Jenkins completed her preliminary review. She then informed Ryan that he would be temporarily removed from field patrol pending an administrative investigation conducted by Internal Affairs and an independent county oversight panel. The purpose, she explained, was not to punish someone for making a single mistake, but to determine whether the incident reflected a broader pattern requiring correction. Marcus finally spoke, not as a son, but as the county police chief addressing everyone present. Public trust is built one decision at a time, he said calmly. When facts are available, they must be allowed to lead the investigation. Assumptions can never replace evidence. Evelyn quietly walked toward her BIC after Captain Jenkins confirmed she was free to continue her day. Before opening the driver's door, she looked back at the group of officers standing together beneath the grey afternoon sky. Every profession depends on learning, she said gently. The difficult days often become the most important teachers, if we are willing to listen. No one answered immediately because there was very little left to say. The documents had never changed. The witness had never changed. The vehicle had never changed. Only the willingness to see the truth had changed, and that realization would continue echoing through the department long after the rain stopped falling and the parking lot became quiet once again. 6 months later, the auditorium at the County Police Training Academy was filled with newly sworn officers preparing to begin careers built on responsibility, judgment, and public trust. The large American flag hanging behind the stage stood quietly beneath the morning sunlight streaming through tall windows, while instructors settled into the front rows with notebooks resting on their laps. Instead of inviting a celebrated speaker with decades of command experience, the Academy had asked Evelyn Carter to share a story that no training manual could fully teach. She walked to the podium with the same calm grace that had carried her through the parking lot months earlier. Her dark blue BIC was parked outside the building, polished exactly as Isaiah had always kept it, reminding her that promises could survive even the hardest days. Marcus Carter sat quietly near the back of the room, not in the reserved section for department leadership but beside ordinary guests. Today he wanted everyone present to see him first as a son who had learned from his mother long before he became county police chief. Officer Ryan Mitchell also attended the session. During the months following the incident, he had completed additional professional training, participated in procedural reviews, and spent countless hours reflecting on every decision he had made that afternoon. He no longer believed that confidence alone made an officer effective. He had learned that humility protected the public just as much as authority did. When Evelyn began speaking, the room became completely silent. Many people have asked me what hurt the most that day, she said gently. It was not the delay. It was not the embarrassment. It was realizing how quickly assumptions can become stronger than evidence if we stop listening. No one moved. Every officer watched her with complete attention. Evelyn smiled softly before continuing. I did not need anyone to recognize me as the mother of a police chief. I needed to be recognized as a citizen whose documents, words, and dignity deserved the same careful consideration given to anyone else. She paused just long enough for the message to settle into the room. Every person you meet is carrying a story you cannot see. Your responsibility is not to guess that story. Your responsibility is to discover the truth with patience. After the presentation ended, Ryan approached Evelyn quietly. His expression reflected neither fear nor obligation, only sincere gratitude for the opportunity to learn from someone who had shown him more grace than he believed he deserved. Mrs. Carter, he said, I cannot change what happened, but I can make certain it changes the way I serve every person I meet from this day forward. Evelyn looked at him warmly. Growth is measured by tomorrow's choices, not yesterday's mistakes. Ryan nodded, understanding that accountability was not a single conversation but a lifelong commitment. As everyone slowly left the auditorium, Marcus remained behind for a moment, watching his mother gather her notes. He smiled the same quiet smile he had worn as a young academy graduate standing beside Isaiah in that old family photograph. Some lessons begin at home long before they reach a classroom. Outside, the Bic waited beneath a clear blue sky, ready for another ordinary drive across town. This time no one questioned who belonged behind the wheel. Yet the most important truth had never been about the car at all. It was about remembering that respect must arrive before titles, fairness must arrive before assumptions, and justice must always recognize the person before it recognizes the position. Only then does a badge truly honor the people it was created to serve.